Hey everybody, how's it going? Drew Creel here. Welcome to episode 7 of Shred Sessions. Today I have an old friend of mine on the show. The vocalist of metalcore band ORTHODOX is in the house. We got Adam Easterling. So Adam, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me, friend.
Heck yeah, dude. This is exciting. So Adam and I, we go way back, although we weren't the closest friends, but we've been around each other just in the Nashville hardcore metal scene. And I've been able to watch Adam go from being like a brand new vocalist to an experienced vocalist that's like well-traveled. So that's just amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've got a lot of, good memories of just really random like DIY shows, like with As Hell Retreats even. Like we played like a birthday party in Hermitage.
First show.
That was Orthodox's first show?
First show.
I was there.
March 31st, 2012.
Oh my gosh, man. That was wild.
I think y'all cut your set short because of a fight, if I don't.
Yeah. I hate to like bring up a random weird memory, but like it was a girl's birthday.
It was my friend Keely's birthday. Yeah.
Keely Rucker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was her birthday party and there was a boyfriend thing.
I was her boyfriend.
Oh my gosh, dude.
But some dude who just came for the show aspect of it, I think hit her.
He hit her.
And then
that's wild.
Something, I don't remember what, not like deliberately, but like it was a show.
Oh, he was moshing.
Yeah, and then I don't remember what happened.
The parents like misunderstood what was happening and maybe didn't anticipate the amount of like aggression that would be at play at this show. Mm-hmm. And so they like got really mad and I don't
remember.
I just remember there being a lot of confusion.
There was definitely confusion, but
so dude, did you grow up in Hendersonville or Hermitage?
Hendersonville.
You did grow up.
I was born in Nashville, grew up through like my early teen years in Hendersonville, and then my parents split and my dad was literally had an apartment on Music Row. So I lived on Music Row and in Hendersonville for my core developing years, you could call.
Well, I started my Nashville journey in Hendersonville. Like I lived with Tyler Riley's. Mm-hmm. First we lived with his mom for a bit when we weren't on tour. And then we lived with his aunt and uncle, the Steels. And so I lived on a couch like for my first year. I was living in Millersville. And so Hendersonville is very close to my heart. And I know like John Michael McCaslin and all those other people like Josh Landreth, all the Hendersonville peeps, that grew up in that area. It's a pretty special place. And ironically, yesterday I was on Old Hickory Lake on a boat. And so it kind of went full circle. And that's why I'm very lobstery today. But that's amazing, man. Yeah, I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you, man, what got you into playing heavy music? Like, how did you start playing metalcore? And like, walk me through your early influences and like the progression to where you are today.
I've been asked the question, as anybody does, like, where did you get into it a lot? And I would say, anytime I think of like what bridged that gap for me was my neighbors. Literally lived across this little field from me, were big nu metal fans. So I heard like Linkin Park from them, things like that. But then also I can tie a lot of my early, like the bands that I really took the time to dive into, ties back to the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtracks.
Yeah. That's been a theme on this podcast.
It's such a monumental thing. Like that game have you seen the documentary on like the making of that game?
I haven't.
It's awesome. I don't remember what it's called, but I mean there's a band, the song Superman by Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Band was playing to little to nobody, and then they get that song on there, and then suddenly like they just find success because of this video game that they tried to give Tony Hawk like a flat rate of like, we're gonna pay you this. He's like, no, I want to hold on to it. You don't give me anything now, whatever. And then they gave him a check for like millions of dollars before the second game released. The soundtrack from that, that's where first time I heard System of a Down was Shimmy off of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. That's probably the biggest influence on me creatively as I started developing with Orthodox was System of a Down.
What an amazing band.
Yeah.
Dude,
oh my gosh.
Somehow they magically fit into the nu metal thing, but they were totally different and doing their own thing.
Yeah, they fit the nu metal attitude, and the fact that I think the only reason they fit into nu metal, they were playing all the tours with it on it, but also nu metal at the time was just this genre that had no explanation or boundaries. And so, I mean, even their last few records are just like heavy rock records, but all the same, like you could look at them and you can put them beside any band that has electric guitar and they fit. And I think that's kind of why they got put under that umbrella.
I've always looked at maybe Pantera and Sepultura's like later stuff as being influential to like nu metal and helping that groove oriented like heavy music sort of form. But I think it's also like the aesthetics of it too, with bands like Cold Chamber, System of a Down, Korn. It was like the weirder that you looked, the more coverage that
Slipknot, Mushroom Head, those guys too.
Exactly. Kitty and Orgy and all those bands.
It was the freak shows, the traveling freak show, and between Kiss and that era, there wasn't really a band that, to my knowledge, really allowed the weird freak kids a place to be confident in themselves. Yeah. And so when Korn, I mean, I think it's kind of, I don't know if the factual data on this, but I feel like it's pretty common to tie Korn to be the originators of nu metal.
I think so too.
They are, I mean, that was what their first record was, 94? It was their first debut, so who knows how long they were doing it before. That right there is, they are singing this crazy weird stuff, dressing however they want. You know, John Davis wore a kilt with no underwear for that MTV glass stage where people are underneath them, like doing things like that. But then at the same time, they have like Nas on a song and they're dressing like they're in the hip hop scene. Yeah. And it all culminates together. And I think it really just because it all goes back to like every real good individual genre of music has its own groove. And that's like such a important element to what, like you said, makes nu metal. Nu metal is like, it is very wavy in the way that it's delivered. And I think that mixed with like the Y2K trend. Yeah. I don't know why I was too young to explain why it took, but that whole...
Well, I was there when the year 2000 hit, you know, and there was legitimate concern. It was like the early age of the internet and people didn't understand how...
How old are you?
I'm 36.
Okay, I'm 31. So I was like, I know we're close, but I didn't know. Yeah. That 5 years makes a difference in the year 2000. You were probably for sure.
Like, yeah, really little.
I was 6 going on 7 on January 1st when the world was supposed to shut down.
Yeah, so I would have been 12, you know. So I distinctly remember that. And I was listening to Silverchair Neon Ballroom, and they had a song called The Year 2000. So... But yeah, man, it makes me think of like, you know, thrash metal. There's like a certain look that thrash metaler guys had, you know, acid wash jeans and like vests and long hair. And they all, like from band to band, they all looked sort of the same. But when nu metal comes along in the mid 90s, people start designing their own aesthetic and they're like fully committed to it. And I feel like today that's less common, but then you have a band like Sleep Token come onto the scene, and they're fully committed to their aesthetic. Now they're like the biggest band in heavy music. I would argue that they probably are, you know, one of the bigger bands.
I'd say they're the most popular in terms of streaming, but it depends on what you consider to be big, because I don't know that they can, like I said, popular in terms of your streaming and such, because they branch into like that mainstream thing, but I don't know that if you're 50-50 in the metal world and the world who like people who like the Maine or whatever, and not the Maine. What is the band I'm thinking of? Is it the Maine?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I don't want to cut you off. Yeah,
50 of that world versus the world that's like, I like hard rock but haven't gotten into metal or what have you. It's kind of like, do you really expect that other side where you're that experimental band for them? Do you expect them to go to the show? Yeah, because I feel like in the world of music nowadays, like you can't base a band's size off of their online numbers, because it can be falsified, but also it doesn't equate to, like, that's one of the craziest things about like SoundCloud rappers and things, is there's people out there who have that one song and they get millions of monthly listeners on Spotify, but then they can only move like 300 to 400 tickets. But then you have a band like Frozen Soul from Texas who has, at any given point, 20,000 to 40,000 monthly listeners, and they're selling out like 700 cap rooms.
Yeah.
And it's just because the dedication of your fan base is, I think that's what makes a band big versus a song, is like how many, that's the proof that your band as a band is bigger than the songs that you write, I guess is probably the best way I could put it.
Oh, that's a really good insight, man. I feel like they're just the band that, Sleep Token is the band that's being talked about on YouTube,
Yes.
probably more than any other newer up and coming heavy band. And some people think that that's great, and other people are annoyed by it, you know? So it's just one of those interesting things.
I have to look up what this damn band is that I'm trying to think
Yeah,
of.
go for it, man. So I can always go back.
Muse, not the Main. The Main, I'm like, the Main was some pop band. Muse is, I feel like but Muse is very, Sleep Token is derivative of the Muse in the way that I feel like they write songs in a very similar way to that band, almost like Imagine Dragons also. I feel like Sleep Token is Imagine Dragons if they just tuned down a little bit. Like, it's very, very similar. And I think that that's part of the reason they're having so much success is it's not really my thing, but there's no denying the genius that goes into finding ways to take two truly combative genres and write songs where you can make those parts work without it just being so jarring that it throws you off. Like, that's part of what makes System of a Down so brilliant, is it's not an easy thing to go from a heavy, demonstratively explosive part to jazz.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not an easy thing to make work. And it also is just, ballsy to do it, because you just know that we're going to put this out and someone's going to hate it. Like,
yeah, man, it's amazing to see people blending genres like that. And another example is Bill Murray. Have you checked out Bill Murray yet?
I've heard the name a bunch.
It's like country metal, and it's very like tongue in cheek, like pro America. It's kind of a joke kind of thing. But they are touring with Sleep Token, I think, in the fall, and I think that tour is like projected to be like a pretty big tour. You know?
Oh, sure.
So. But you're right. It does take some serious like craftsmanship to pull that off well.
Yeah.
I've always been more of a purist. Like, what's the most pure death metal band, or what's the best hardcore band? But it is fun to see people kind of put their other influences into their art, you
Absolutely.
know, and create something new with that. I always appreciate that. And that's one of the things I like about your band, man. One thing I wanted to ask you, man, I noticed recently you guys partnered with Jinko Jeans. Was that just a one-time post, or are you guys collaborating like on a marketing kind of thing? Or tell us about, how did that happen?
So we put out this song called Soaking Nerves, which we recorded with all of our last LP, Learning to Dissolve. And when we were writing Learning to Dissolve, Austin would reference certain things as like, oh, this is the big jump part, like the whole room's jumping kind of thing. And then we talked about that opening riff in Soaking Nerves. It's just like this very Coal Chamber big truck type thing, you know, like. And he called that the Big Pants riff. He's like, oh, this is a Big Pants riff. And so when we put the song out, I put out on the caption of our socials, I think I said something like, if you're not wearing big pants, don't even turn this fucking song on, or something like that. And that was like a funny thing. I was like, oh, people will listen because they're like, what are you talking about? And then Revolver takes it, puts their PR thing out with it that says, Orthodox brings, quote, big pants music. And I was like, uh-oh. Guess this is a thing now. So with that, we all started pushing big pants music as like our tongue-in-cheek brand. I mean, all of us wear big pants as it is, but that's just like our style. You know, Shiloh already had a bunch of Jinkos and stuff like that, but our manager was like, what if I could get you an endorsement with Jinko? I was like, yeah, what if? Okay. Haven't seen them do anything with anybody in forever. at least not in our world. And even the creative director that he eventually went through to make the connection was like, is the heavy music scene aware of Jinkos? And I'm like, you guys have no idea. You don't realize. So he just really got in touch with the guy. I was like, hey, they're pushing this. They've got a decent following based off of this weird, true niche of big pants music that they, not that we started, but that we coined. And with that, they were just like, yeah, we'll get them some stuff. And we were like, cool. That was really kind of the extent of what it was. We haven't asked them for much since, just because we're like, we'll wait till we have a new product to push, essentially, to be like, hey, we're doing new music videos, send us some shit and we'll put it in there. And that was really kind of just, they just floated us some free stuff and said, yeah, take some pictures in it. And we were like, cool, if you want us to do this, we're going to make it look like a photo shoot, essentially. So we may have made it look like a bigger deal than it was, but nobody got mad at us, so, you know, whatever.
Well, when I saw the post, it made perfect sense. And it wasn't like out of place. It wasn't like over the top or like ridiculous. I was like, Orthodox is the type of band that would wear some Jinkos and make it cool and hard. You know, like it makes people want to mosh, you know, at least I think. And I thought it was funny on your Wikipedia, it says like, Adam Easterling describes Orthodox as big pants music. Yeah. It's like historically, like it's in there.
Did you message me that the other day?
I did not.
Somebody.
I don't think I did.
Oh, literally our manager brought that. I was like, yeah, our Wikipedia page said this. And my response was, we have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
I've never even looked at it. So I hope there's nothing. I hope you haven't put anything bad on there about me, Wikipedia.
No, it's all good stuff, man. No, it was solid, dude. Is there a certain Jinko jeans like model that you would prefer to wear? Because they've got some different ones.
The Cannons.
The Cannons, dude. Yeah.
I'm not the type to wear the huge Jinkos. It's not my style. Yeah. The Cannons are...
Is that an Austin kind of thing?
No, actually, Austin wears the Cannons. I'll show you... I'll show you who that thing is.
There's some pretty cool names for these. The 101 Twin Cannons.
Twin Cannons, that's what it is.
Twin Cannons, baby.
No, so Shiloh's the one who loves the just big son bitches. Like, hold on. I've got
169 Lowdown. The Indicator Cargos look insane.
I love those. Those are the ones that I wanted, but they were out in my size when we went to them for the order. So this is one of my favorite photos. When we did our headliner last summer, we had a show in Columbus, which is where Shiloh and Mike, our bassist and drummer, live. And Shiloh was like...
Columbus, Ohio?
Yes. Shiloh was like, I'm so excited because I've got these Jinkos waiting on me. And we played this place called Ace of Cups, and there's like this balcony that is the green room, and we look up, and he's just got
oh my god,
his pants hanging over the balcony.
Heck yeah,
and I was like,
dude.
That is the most insane shit I've ever seen. And so we had everybody trying them on just because it was like, I can't believe how big. I think they're 36-inch pant opening.
You can fit humans inside these.
It's
these
bigger
pipes.
It's a bigger opening at the end of his foot than I wear around my waist. Like it's so big,
dude.
So those are nuts,
dude. When I was in middle school, they were rolling those out.
Yeah,
and friends you'd try to like one up each other. You'd be like, oh bro, I got these. Check these bad boys out. And like parents were literally like put off by them and scared. They're like, oh, my kid's getting into bad stuff now.
It definitely,
he wants a pair of these.
I feel like, especially where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Chicago suburbs.
Okay, I was gonna say the suburb side of that. It's definitely like why are you bringing attention to yourself? Where are you not getting this attention? Is the thought that I feel like parents go through, especially back then, pre-internet kind of thing, you know, or at least back in the dial-up days, you could call it. But like, yeah, I can totally understand why people were put off by them.
Well, I could tell you this, like parents legitimately thought they were like stuff that gang members wore. Yeah. You know, and stuff that they had heard about on the news, and people who shoot guns wear these types of pants. It's an interesting thing. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for breaking that down for me, man.
Dude, what's funny is Shiloh wears a pair on stage every night.
Shiloh's your bass player, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the pockets are so big that there's certain nights where I love messing with Shiloh while we play, but I would get behind him and I'd be able to like drop a full water bottle just into his back pocket while we're playing. Like the stuff you can fit in those back pockets is
like, what's this extra weight that's connected to me while I'm trying to rock out?
He's like, oh, Adam's messing with me. But like, there's a video of like some guy showing up in Jinkos, and he's like, oh, they were like, we're gonna skate this spot, and he's like, I forgot the boards, and he turns around and he's got 2 skateboards in his back pockets of these Jinkos. They're so big.
They have a utilitarian function, man.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
They're awesome for that.
Absolutely. Deep pockets. That's the Jinko way. Yeah, for
Heck
sure.
yeah, man. Well, dude, I wanted to ask you, recently you played some show, Orthodox played a show with PLEA for Purging when they did their back-to-back return show.
Yep.
With like No Cure, and there's several other like bands from back in the day. Tell us about how that happened, and what was it like to play with bands that you probably looked up to when you were a kid?
Andy actually came to me early 2020 about, I think it's time. Let's bring PLEA back. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. So we had a whole flyer. We were ready to announce. World shuts down. Never happens.
Pandemic happens,
yes,
yeah.
If you remember 2020.
Try not to, but...
So from there, I think he kind of was just like, yeah, I guess it's just not going to happen. That's a pretty big red flag. I'm going to go make burgers. And Bad Luck Burger, by the way, if you're ever in Nashville, that's the place to go.
Dude, I think Bad Luck Burger's been mentioned on like over half of the episodes of this podcast.
It's no joke.
I mean, hey,
half of the like Nashville Breakdown Music alumni works for it, but but the burgers are actually just genuinely delicious. They're very good.
They're amazing.
You should send this to Andy as here's a promotional clip for you, bud. He'll love that. But but yeah, it was and then it was talked about a bunch. I'm sure our mutual friend Wes Breedwell approaches me. We did those Alert the Sky reunion shows that As Hell Retreats played.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, I did not play that show. I think maybe Blake Hardman and Tyler played.
That's right, okay.
Probably.
But
which I was just a member of As Hell Retreats for 1 year of the band. So I don't, and I never wrote any music with them as much as I would have loved to at the time. But yeah, go ahead, man.
So we did those shows. Andy came out, saw them, and then I think that kind of got the itch to come back to him, and he's like, okay, we should probably do a PLEA reunion. And then they got the offer to play Furnace Fest. When they confirmed they were going to play Furnace Fest, he was like, cool, we'll do Furnace Fest September of 2023. And then day after we play, we'll announce the first show. Well, I say the first show. We'll announce the show. Me and Wes figured out where we were going to put it with the Basement East and got it all ready to go. Furnace Fest, their set is... we also were fortunate enough to play the same year. And I watched a ton of bands in there. Their set might have been top 3 wildest sets of the weekend. It was non-stop people flying off the stage. It was a blast. And
PLEA's thing is stage dives.
Yeah, they just always love stage dives. And I mean, I think during their song Malevolence, he's like, I want 100 stage dives. And Shiloh, our bassist, sat there and counted. He said they got up to 94 or 96, something like that, on their last song. It was so congested up there that I was trying to get up there, and we'd made friends with all of the like stagehands and security from playing day one and just hanging the whole weekend. They were trying to help me up. There was not a window of opportunity for me to get up and jump off the stage because there was just so many people the whole time. And so yeah, that show goes crazy. It was awesome. They're like, oh cool, all right, maybe our reunion show is going to go well. Sells out 600 tickets in 25 hours. Gone. And then they were like, oh, should we upgrade the venue? And I was like, your thing is stage dives. There's not a venue upgrade in Nashville at the moment that allows no barricaded shows. So we were like, let's just add a second show. Added the second show. It goes super, super, super well. It doesn't sell out right away, but does really well. And so that's how that came about, was just they were like, we want to play these shows. Will Orthodox be our direct support? Because they wanted to do the old headline up, but they want to have a current band, essentially. And Mike, our drummer, has a PLEA tattoo. Loves that band. Has the little tooth in the pliers thing. So that's how those shows came about. in terms of actually playing the shows was amazing. Alert the Sky, it has always been, back in my high school days, that was like my favorite band. Had like one of their songs, Human Nature, like printed out on a little sheet in my binder.
Yes.
Like, loved that band. And so getting to play with them, as well as Alcina, who I looked up to back in the day, playing shows with these bands that, as a young kid entering like the Rocketown, Nashville scene, these were the peak of like your local community.
Yeah.
Playing with them, and almost every member of those bands coming up to me being like, the moment we heard Orthodox was playing, we knew we had to practice more. I was like, that's a crazy thing for me to hear. And so to be on the show, not just like as a, oh, we'll put, Adam's been around so long, we'll put him on, like as a, hey, we want your band to help us sell tickets, was like a cool full circle thing for me.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't, back when I was a little kid, I say a little kid, back when I was a teenager, just never really pictured, not even when I was a teenager, back when I started at Orthodox, I never pictured getting to that level. Like, we did our headliner at Basement East end of last summer and sold out as well. And so I was like, we just did 3 shows in the span of 6 months, all of which sold like 600 tickets each, which we're not the headliner on the other 2, but we're as close as you can get, so that counts. It's like, that was just like a very cool moment for me to kind of take in and realize like where we are.
Yeah.
So that, on top of getting to see all those bands play together again, was awesome.
Well, man, your band is incredible, dude. Every release, you guys you just get better and better at the art form of just making the best music to mosh to, but also writing songs about stuff that matters and that resonates with a lot of people. You know, like, I think your music is really relatable, and you're kind of like the mouthpiece of this generation that's kind of caught between such an interesting time, like with the pandemic and so many things that are happening in the world. And yeah, it's just amazing to see you guys grow, like as much as you have over the years.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask you, man, like, describe like the Rocketown scene kind of in like the 2008, 2009, maybe 2010 era of Nashville. I know Nashville flooded in 2010. I didn't arrive until 2012, but I heard so many stories about the original Rocketown. But take us back there and describe what it was like going to a show there and who you saw.
It's funny when I think about it, because it's kind of like if you go to like your first house that you grew up at and you're like, everything seems so much bigger. Sometimes I kind of wonder if that's how it was in my head, and then I really like talk to people and realize like it was just that. It was as good as it kind of was perceived as. But
yeah,
Old Rocketown was on the corner of 6th Avenue South, and I can't remember what the through street was, but the shows, it was such a cool, I was fortunate enough to be there in my I'm just starting to go to shows phases, because even when it was like a shot show, I was just happy to be there and mosh. Like, I was just so wanted to be there every weekend, no matter what was happening. And if I wasn't at Rocketown, I was at 6th Avenue skating. It was just where I wanted to be all the time. In that, the shows themselves, like my first show was Haste the Day, Scary Kids, Scaring Kids, Drop Dead Gorgeous, Gwen Stacy, and As Hell Retreats.
Wow.
So my first perception of As Hell Retreats is I'm a middle schooler, and they're opening up this huge, sold out main room show.
And those guys were probably just a few years older than you.
They were still in high school. Jackson was, I think, maybe a junior in high school. Like, Sasha Park, the girl that was like one of the hands that made Rocketown work, was still in high school. Like, and you don't realize that when you're there looking at it under these spotlights. It's just such a bigger thing. Mm-hmm. And seeing them, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I'd never been to a show with a pit like that. I'd never seen anything like that. And I was like, this is unreal. I have to find a way to get back here. And so I just kept paying attention to what the next thing coming through was. I don't know what I might have gone to before. What's funny is my mom was like, you can go to the show, but we're not going to make this a thing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, were your parents like cool with you going to these like maybe kind of heavy and violent shows? Or
I think realistically, I was able to be like, these bands are Christian bands. It's okay. Like being in the Southeast, that was, I'm raised in a Southern Baptist family, so I was able to be like, Haste the Day, Gwen Stacy, As Hell Retreats are all Christian bands. Yeah, praise God, whatever. So
similar for me, man. I mean, I grew up in kind of the Elgin, Illinois area, and there was a place called Wonderland Ballroom, and that's where I saw like Skillet, Skillet back in the Fishnet days, but like other bands like Living Sacrifice and 1,000 Foot Crutch, CCM bands. But then I found out about the heavier shows, and I was like, these are the ones I need to go to. But because they were Christian, you could sort of convince your parents that, hey, like it may be really aggressive and they're screaming all the time, but it's something that's good for me to be a part of. You could kind of
like the first shirt I bought at a show was an Impending Doom shirt from Scream the Prayer, which was I think that same year. I think that might have been the next like real show that I went to.
Forgot all about Scream the Prayer, man. That was a good tour to get on if you were a band.
Oh, absolutely. Back then, especially. Impending Doom played. They had this shirt that had like an angel with a dagger, like holding like a dead demon in his hands, and he's just like holding the dagger there, and it was a pretty morbid shirt.
It's about killing demons,
literally.
Mom.
I think that's. I was like, oh, it's not that bad. He's killed a demon. Like it's an angel.
It's good.
Yeah, and that's kind of like how I sold it to him. And eventually, I think they realized after me going as many times as I did that they realized like, okay, this is a decent community of people. My friends from those shows started coming around, and they started meeting these people and realizing this is not a bad place. And so they started just letting me go whenever, because they knew that if it was at Rocketown, I was in a safe place. Nothing's going to happen here. We're good. I didn't tell them that half the time they would drop me off at Rocketown and I'd walk up 4 blocks to the Muse, which was a much worse place. But
the Muse, dude.
Yeah.
So you tell your mom that there'd be a show at Rocketown, and then you'd walk to the Muse to the actual show.
Yes.
And that's where you saw like Acacia Strain or something like that.
First Muse show was Carnifex. I think the second one I saw there was like Kill Whitney Dead. But I mean, yeah, probably some of the craziest shows I ever went to were at the Muse. Like there was that Despised Icon Wins a Plague tour right after not Resurrect the Morning. That was a band. Whatever the Morning record is with MVP from Despised Icon had just come out. It was nuts. It was them. I think For Today was on it, so that was interesting. The World We Knew, I think, was playing.
I don't even remember,
dude. Yeah,
remember that band at all.
All these bands I would see, saw Backtrack and Trapped Under Ice there, Cruel Hand, Straight from the Path. Back when they were first like getting the jump, and their shows were terrifying. Mm-hmm. Like it was a really cool. It was funny because you just had different crowds. Like you had the Rocketown crowd, which was a mix of some of the tougher guys, and then you had the Muse crowd, which was just a like, don't come here if you can't handle it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the Muse is where I learned to fight. Realistically, like that was pretty much where you bonded with people who were like, oh, I don't know you that well, but I dislike that guy more, so I'm on your side in this one, and you just fight people in this small black cinder block, black floor room. It was just, in hindsight, I've said every time I brought it up, like, not a place I should have been at that age.
Yeah, man. The Muse actually kind of scared the crap out of me. The As Hell Retreats played there once, and I was
there. It was with King Conquer.
Yes, King Conquer.
Yep.
Yeah, because we toured with them. That band is awesome. Yeah, R.I.P. John, who played guitar in that band. The Muse was more violent than anything I had seen, and I think there was a dark presence in that building, dude.
I mean, it was just, there was no rules. I think that was a big difference between that and like Rocketown, where Rocketown was owned by this gospel singer, Michael W. Smith. They had security team.
Yeah, you had to have security at every event, right?
You weren't allowed to stage dive. You had to sign a waiver as a band that you weren't going to like break these policies. And then you go to the Muse, nobody gives a shit about whether you're okay or not there. People, I mean, literally I saw the owner this dude got beat up bad. He's up at the front, like, asking for water, and the owner just throws him out. And I'm like, this is a crazy place to be.
Yeah.
And you learned quickly who your friends were and weren't there, because, like, probably the craziest show I ever saw there was Suffocation, Whitechapel, like, days after This Is Exile came out. Decrepit Birth. I don't remember who the other band was, but opening was Veil of Maya right after the Common Man Collapse came out. And to anybody that's listening to this, that's like, oh, these are deathcore bands, how are these shows so crazy? Nashville didn't have like a crazy hardcore scene at this time. All the scary shows were the deathcore shows where people got beat the fuck up at these shows, like bad. It was like people dropping weapons into the pit, just ridiculous things that shouldn't happen at a show, essentially.
Yeah.
I remember during Veil of Maya there was 12 fights. Whitechapel was playing This Is Exile, but they were playing a lot of Somatic Defilement, which is, in my opinion, the perfect deathcore record. It is probably still to this day the heaviest one. Mm-hmm. And, dude, every time they'd start one of those older songs, you just, like, felt a little more unease, because you're like, man, I know that this part's coming up in, like, 2 minutes, and I can't go anywhere.
Yeah. When the intensity is already at the ceiling and you know that there's a mosh part coming up, you're like, what is about to happen to this room?
And that was, I think that was the dark presence of the place, is like, you can't predict what's going to happen because anyone could just walk in.
Yeah.
And they never stopped selling tickets. Like, I think there was like 400 people at that show in a room that's like 3.5 of this bedroom. Like, it wasn't a big place.
Did you ever see the cops get involved, like, at shows there? No. Yeah, I never saw the cops come to any shows.
It got shut down a couple times. The venue got shut down a couple times, unrelated to shows, because they would find bodies on the other side of that fence.
Oh my gosh.
By the interstate, like, kind of frequently.
Yeah. So the Muse is insane. Like, do you ever hear, like, what happened to it? Like, why it closed down, or like?
I don't know the logistics of why it closed down. I don't want to speculate on the owner's business tactics, but, like, it closed down and reopened multiple times. Couldn't tell you what for. All I know, it could have been the typical Nashville thing of the owner just was like, I'm not renewing your lease, I'm going to sell this building, and now it's a Domino's.
Well, I feel like there's probably a lot of liability in those type of venues. Like, if someone dies at a show or something, like, what happens? Like, what's the legal implications of?
I mean, I've never had to.
Stuff.
I mean, there's only a liability if somebody presses a charge, and the people at the Muse were not the type to press charges.
Yeah, it's like, you're gonna blame the person that you got in a fight with. You're not gonna blame the venue itself in that kind of situation. But yeah, man, have you played any other shows on tour recently that were, like, rather violent, or that you were kind of scared about?
I haven't been nervous at a show. I'll tell you, the only band that makes me nervous when I see them, and it's not because I'm like, somebody's gonna get killed, it's just like, it's just, you know how hard people want to go, is Chamber.
Yeah.
That is the evilest sounding band on the planet, and every time they play Nashville, especially because it's all my friends, I'm like, I hope somebody doesn't get knocked unconscious. That's like, it's more so my, like, older empathy now versus my, like, fear for my own. What's funny, we kind of realized with Orthodox is that a lot of the tours that we do, we are the heavier band on the tour most of the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, we just did a tour with Boundaries, Kaonashi, and No Cure. Mm-hmm. And sold out 23 of the 26 shows. It was
incredible.
Unbelievable tour. And you have No Cure, who's opening every day. They are bringing super intense
straight edge energy
for sure, but just like death metal adjacent mosh stuff, but it is still the opening band, so there's always that, like, timidness of, like, people psychologically getting used to the room. Kaonashi brings a completely different curveball of emotion and reaction, but they have this internet sensationalism about them right now that was bringing people in and making their sets awesome. And then it was literally like the moment we started, you just felt the energy shift. You're like, oh, this is the scary band. And so
sick, dude.
People, man, we played in Sacramento. Shout out if anybody here was at our last Goldfield show. I'm glad you made it. Literally, we're on our third song, and I look out the window straight ahead of me, and a fire truck pulls up, and I just watch the brakes decompress, and it parks. And I was like, what happened? And then I'm just watching as I'm going. I'm like looking through and just seeing like limping off, dragged off, not conscious. Watch their leg fold in, just injury after injury after injury after injury. Oh, somebody just got hit so hard they puked. Like unreal craziness, to the point where when we were done, I was like, hey, you guys load out. I'm going to go try to save face, and maybe a free t-shirt can save a lawsuit from us right now. Like this, I couldn't believe how unhinged the show was. It ironically was the show that our agent was at, and the general manager of our booking agency as well. Man. So
do you ever feel like responsible for stuff like that, man? Do you feel like it's like the singer's job to be like, hey guys, calm down, you know, kind of a thing? I know it sounds really lame to do that at a metal show, but like, how do you feel about that?
You read it. It's all based on reaction, and like you kind of, you know, you take a look in and see how the room is before your set. So you're like, okay, how are people responding to everybody else right now? At the end of the day, it's not my responsibility how one scene reacts, because I really only know I'm only really familiar with how my city does things. I can't bring my expectation of that to your place. Mm-hmm. If some dude is being a dickhead, I myself, as well as everyone else in my band, has no problem with calling them out in front of everybody.
Yeah. Somebody's just like crowd killing and just intentionally trying to hurt people.
Not necessarily that, because that's a part of the show.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, it's just like, nowadays I feel like because people don't fight as much as they used to, I think that has made it so that shows are crazier, because there's not this big consequence of if I hit the wrong person, I'm going to get jumped, which overall helps the show. The energy is supposed to be this like chaotic, controlled chaos, essentially, of like, I tell anytime that when we do a headliner, I bring the security team in, like, hey, this is what's going to happen. You treat it like it's a contact sport, because that's what it is. Yeah. Everyone here knows what they're getting into. You can tell the difference in somebody who's moshing and somebody who's fighting. Like it is not hard to figure it out. And aside from that, you don't need to touch anybody. Mm-hmm. Because most of the time, if somebody's being a problem, it will get sorted with the community that is at every single show together. So that's just kind of a part of it. It is one of those things where if somebody's really hurt, we will stop and be like, yo, clear a path, whatever. Yeah, but if a fight happens, I'm not stopping. Yeah. That's not my problem at the end of the day. Like, I'm here. If you want to make this about you, you go for it, but we're going to make fun of you until you're out of the building. Yeah. And because it's already hard enough to regain somebody's focus after an actual fight, like a little push and shove, somebody gets punched, whatever. But like if something really starts and we're in the middle of a song, trying to regain that momentum because you stopped for something that is bound to happen at these shows at some point, it's just not feasible. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we don't stop for fighting. I know that's not a popular take sometimes, but that is your problem, not mine.
Jackson Green used to come off of the stage and go out into the crowd and break up the fight if we were in the middle of a set. And sometimes we would keep riffing, but when we would see him like leave the stage, we would kind of all stop. Yeah. And like, oh, what the heck, man? Like, and then he kind of like I think maybe somebody from PLEA, like maybe it was Andy, that told him like, you don't need to do that anymore, man. Like you're on stage, you're the performer, you're there to put on a show. You're not responsible for two random people in Virginia Beach getting in a fight, or whatever.
It's crazy you say Virginia Beach, because that is where some of the craziest fights that have ever happened at our shows have been.
I think it's the military, bro.
It might. That might have something to do with it, for sure.
The military presence.
Virginia Beach and Colorado Springs go pretty hard, and they both have bases. So
it's cowboys and military guys that make the shows more violent.
Yeah, they are. They love to get down. It is wild. What's funny is we played this bar with this band called Old Wounds forever ago. This fight happens during Old Wounds that's so bad. It's one of those really long rooms, and the merch tables are 50 yards from where the show's happening, and it's just this ball of, it started with these people, and it's just growing participants as it's making its way to the door, to where like all of our merch tables are getting flipped. People are coming in and seeing what's happening and like pushing by and just grabbing somebody and going for it. Months later, I'm at a show at Rocketown for Basement and Turnover. Turnover had just put out Peripheral Vision.
Alternative rock bands, basically,
yes.
right?
And the singer from Turnover is outside. I'm talking with Michael Rowe, who's buddies with them.
Daisy Head.
Yes.
Shout out.
And they're talking, and I look at him, I was like, man, you look so familiar to me. So where do you live? He's like, oh, I live in Virginia Beach. I was like, were you at that Old Wound show a few months ago? I was like, yeah. Or he goes, yeah. And I was like, I watched you like jump into this battleground and just grab some dude and just swing. He's like, oh yeah, my buddy was in the mix. I had to get him out of there. It's like the singer of Turnover was a part of this massive brawl, just like trying to pull his friend out essentially. But it was just, I was like, man, it's funny how connected that world is, no matter how different the bands all sound.
And I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that we're just in America, that people want to mosh more, because I had Jack Anderson from Knoll on the other day, and he was talking about in Europe, they just kind of stand and watch your band. Like, there's not nearly as much moshing. The crowds are a little bit older. So, have you guys been to Europe?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
We had a couple of different tours lined up for it, and of course, 2020. And,
yeah.
But
you'll get over there.
Yeah, we have plans for it with next year. But yeah, every American band is like, yeah, they'll have like a set here that's kind of tame. They're like, that was a good Europe set, and you're like, oh, okay. Interesting. But at the same time, the difference in that is that, like, when you play a Europe set or you go to a Europe show, if you're the opening band, everyone who's going to be at that show is there at the start of the show. Mm-hmm. Like, they want to see the bands. They want to be involved with the show in a way of, like, more of almost like a traditional concert setting, because really, like, the punk scene sort of originated out that way. And that's kind of the alternative mecca in terms of some of the biggest bands in the genres are from there. It's cool because they, like I said, they are super attentive to what your band is, but they also, you've got to like earn, to what I understand, you have to kind of earn the European respect once you're there. Like bands that have toured the States 1,000 times go over there and you're starting over, essentially.
Yeah.
You're playing to places you've never been, people who may not have never heard of you because like you don't show up on their Spotify algorithm or whatever because you're on the other side of the world. So It's a stressful thing for me to think about because I'm like, we've been touring here and doing well here last 10 years. So I'm like, going over there is going to be an interesting kind of humble slap to the face, I feel like, but we're long overdue. So I'm excited to finally get over there.
That'll be awesome, man. Yeah, I hope you do get over there soon. Talk to me about Orthodox as a straight edge band. Is Orthodox a straight edge band? Talk about the hardcore ethos and the straight edge ethos and like what that means to you, and maybe some of the things that you've been noticing more recently in the scene.
Straight edge was always just an important part of my upbringing in the hardcore scene. And when Orthodox started, I just wanted to start a straight edge band. And it kind of just was one of those things that stuck. And then as we started rotating members in, that was kind of just let's try to keep this thing, especially if there was a moment there, kind of like late 2010s, where you didn't see a lot of straight edge bands around for a minute.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was kind of even more reason for me to keep that part of the band going. And though we're not like No Cure or Inclination, where we have the songs that like say I'm still fucking straight edge or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of the material that I write about is more so based of my experiences that led me to being straight edge. And then it's like the same thing with Boundaries is a straight edge band.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, exactly. They have like a straight edge song kind of in the same vein that we have one, where it's like, this is pretty obvious if you look at what it's talking about, but it's not like a straight fucking edge song.
Yeah.
But they are a straight edge band that it's kind of just the movement itself doesn't necessarily need to be reflected in the lyrics for it to be a part of the movement. Because there's, especially nowadays, more and more bands that are straight edge bands you would never know if you didn't kind of know. Like One Step Closer is a band that just put out an amazing record. They're leaning really into the alternative rock world, but they're a straight edge band, played like the Have Heart reunion shows back like a few years back and things like that. And so, yeah, it's almost more of like a internal, I mean, it's very much nobody's business but your own kind of thing, but in terms of Orthodox, it's just like this has been a positive thing for me. We're not the kind of person, I don't care what anybody else does so long as you don't hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
But that's kind of just been what the straight edge part of Orthodox has always been. It's just showing that it's still here. It still exists.
Yeah.
We're still around.
I think it's important, man. And I think it's something that it is a positive thing. I know the original straight edge bands and the original movement was kind of violent, where they would like beat up someone smoking a cigarette or beat up someone who was drinking a beer at a show or something like that. Or it was almost like a gang kind of a thing if you kind of study the history, like going back to the 80s. It's really hard to make sense of what is going on in the world, especially right now, like post-pandemic.
Yes.
And it's even harder to understand what's going on or even to figure out who you are as a person if you're on drugs or alcohol. So I kind of think it's cool that bands like No Cure and your band exist, because I think it helps a lot of young people sort out a lot of confusing stuff that they come across in their life. So when did you decide to be straight edge, and walk me through that process, like when you were younger?
So what's funny is, I mean, I've always been sober. I've never drank, never smoked, nothing like that. I just was raised in a household with a family full of genetically addictive personalities and addiction issues. And growing up, I dealt with how addiction can change a household, and kind of just that was enough for me to be like, I probably shouldn't do this. And then I was in this crappy little Christian metal band, and I was the only one in the band that didn't smoke weed. So they
Sick,
were like,
dude.
oh, you're straight edge. And I was like, what is that? This was like really kind of before I really got into hardcore and all that. So I was saying that I was straight edge before I really knew what it was. Mm-hmm. And then as I learned what it was, it made me feel even stronger about it, essentially, and like what it represents and all that kind of stuff. And so in terms of what made me decide to claim, it was almost like an accidental stumbling upon this term that was given to me by these potheads. But I was so young. I think I was like 14. So yeah, as the years went on, I started learning more and more about it. And really, I mean, everybody kind of goes through that whole phase of you find the basic, meat grinder hardcore music, and then you pretend like nothing you ever liked before existed for a little bit. And that's like when I really started getting proud of like the straight edge side of who I was and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that's where that started.
Yeah, I find it to be really like interesting, man, that like especially speaking about No Cure, I've never met any of those guys before. I'm really just impressed overall with what they've accomplished as a younger band, and they have their own image, and their songs are super abrasive and super intense, and I have yet to see them live, but I found their lyrics to be a little off-putting in the sense that like they sing about like caving in the skull of someone who drinks or may have killed someone in a car accident or something like that. Like, I know it's very intense, but I think what they're trying to do, or at least how I interpret it, is they're trying to express the destruction of alcohol and other substances in the most extreme way that they can in the form of music. I don't think they actually literally want to like take a hammer to someone's skull. Like,
no,
but the music, if you read the lyrics, like, so what do you think about that, man? Like,
I think that they are leaning into something that kind of had a lack. Like, that's the whole point of the band, is to be blatantly
unapologetic.
I just want to say unforgivably.
You could say that
unforgivably straight edge. Unapologetically straight edge.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, they're kind of like the modern day Agitator, and I don't know if you remember that band.
No.
But similar things. They had songs about they had like a song that says when you got behind the wheel, I lost my ability to feel, kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
And I to a degree stand with that mentality of like drinking and driving is the stupidest, most irresponsible, selfish thing you can do, in my mind.
Yeah.
It can fuck your life up, just even if nobody gets in a wreck. DUI is hard to get past. And then also, you can literally kill somebody just because you couldn't click Uber instead of turning the key. So, as somebody who's never been drunk, I know that's like, people are like, oh, well, how could you understand? Fuck you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I stand with them in the opinion of like the glorification of drug culture and all that kind of stuff is not healthy. in terms of their like the caving in thing, they're not those people. They're
They
sweethearts.
seem like incredibly nice dudes. Yeah.
Blythe, their singer, he's played guitar in Orthodox for a couple tours as well. Aesop, one of their guitarists, is an absolute sweetheart. She is like so talented in so many different ways, like artistically.
A serious death metal ripper.
Yeah, she kicks ass. And then Kyle played in My Children, My Bride. And then Jake Murnane, the bassist, he is in Moru.
Also plays in Moru. Yeah.
Absolute sweetheart. They're the type of people that the moment that shit goes south, they've got your back, but they're not looking for a problem. And I think that at the end of the day, it's weird to like see these things as they are, but like, is it any different than like listening to hip hop music that talks about drive-by shootings or prosthetic fluid asphyxiation by Whitechapel, where he's talking about being Jack the Ripper? It's like extreme lyricism exists everywhere. I think it's just kind of weird to some people because this is a part of our culture that isn't usually targeted in songs. Yeah. And so I think that they found their niche. They found, I'd say gimmick, that it sounds negative, but it is very much a good thing in the world of metal, especially where every band looks and sounds the same. Yeah. And like, it's kind of corny, but they know it and they don't care.
I don't think it's corny at all. I think it hits really hard, and it makes you want a little bit of scare factor around your band, and they look scared.
Every single one of them looks like a wild card. You're like, I think I could beat them up, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know for sure.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
I think alcohol use in general, it's something that's become more top of mind in the American consciousness when you have people like Andrew Huberman and Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Are you familiar with these people? Not. They're like they're not medical doctors. I think Dr. Rhonda Patrick is, but they're clinical researchers. So they research things like, what does alcohol do to the body? Like how much, and one thing that Andrew Huberman has been talking about, like if you want to listen to like a 3-hour podcast of him talking about all of the details of what alcohol actually does to your body, it would astound like most people. And he recently said like really anything more than 2 drinks per day has a long-term detrimental effect on your health. And I think the average American would be like, 2 beers, that's nothing. Like I can drink up 6-pack a day or whatever. But I think we're finding that alcohol is truly damaging, so it's like, I can understand life is hard, just having to work a job and go and do the same thing every day. It's really hard, but I just don't think you need your little bottle to make you feel better. And if you can grow out of that or find a way to not have to rely on that, you probably should.
Obviously, there's always healthier coping mechanisms that I would push people to try to find. If you need a drink to like clear your social anxiety so that you can hang with people and be social, take it. Who cares? I don't care what you do so long as you don't do something that can hurt somebody else. It's like, you are your own person. If you want to drink, go for it. That's awesome. Have fun. It's not my thing. If you smell like booze and you get close to my face, I'm going to literally put an arm between us and be like, hey, give me some space. But like, if you need to do this, if that's what you need to do to feel good about yourself, don't let anybody take that away from you. But don't make it anybody else's problem.
Yeah.
That's my take, like, man. Where I stand on that is like, the moment that you start getting, aggro over something, or like I said, the moment you think that you need to drive somewhere drunk, that's when you become a liability.
Yeah.
And that's when you need some help. But I have no issue with anybody doing whatever they need to do to find themselves and to find happiness. Like, that is the ultimate, like you were saying, like, I just put out there, I just got a brand new truck. It's fucking awesome. But I pulled up and you were like, yeah, thank you. You were like, oh, that's so cool. Like, it's great. And when I talked to my mom about it, she was like, are you sure you want to like take on payments for a car with all this stuff? And I was like, money doesn't like matter. What matters is the things that, like, to me, like with what my day to day is, having a truck just relieves a lot of need from other people. If I got to haul something, I feel better in a car that's bigger because it's better for your back, because I got a bad back. things like that is like that
you
is
will
not
always have a job now that you have a truck.
Exactly. But like with that, it's kind of a weird tie. But like the conversations I had with her about, I'm not worried about what this costs because the money by itself just being there does nothing for me. But having this brings me peace and happiness in any sort of way. Like,
yeah,
that's what is more important. And I think that's something a lot of our generation is realizing because we can't all buy houses anymore because everyone in the generation before us really screwed it up for the most of us. And it's kind of just like if you, like I said, do whatever you want to do to be happy, just so long as it doesn't create a victim.
That's good, man. I mean, I'm similar in the sense that, like, I like having things.
Yes.
Because I'd rather have, like, this very sick amplifier that you can't see on camera, but I'd rather have that than have a bunch of money in the bank. Because I'm going to play that every day. As a metal guitar player, having a tube amp, I feel, like, connected to metal more than I do if I play through, like, a little quad cortex or something. No offense. I know that's a huge debate in the guitar community. They're both great. But you know, I would rather have a couple more guitars than have a bunch of money in the bank that is losing value every day.
Every day.
So might as well get the thing now and get, you know, make it work for you. If you don't have an Orthodox shirt, you should probably buy one. That'll help you out with some payments.
There we go. Yeah. Fantastic.
Buy some CDs, buy some merch.
OrthodoxTN.com. Please buy our stuff.
Heck yeah. Well, dude, you guys recently released The Other Side of the Nail, a new single. Is this part of an upcoming EP or full-length record?
That was the last song from the Learning to Dissolve sessions.
Oh, is it really?
That was the final song. We recorded that in August of 2021.
No kidding.
And it was just like we've been playing the breakdown at the end of it as like the outro to our set since we toured with Acacia Strain back in 2021. And it was one of those things where it didn't benefit us to put the song out yet. Like, It was like, oh, we could do it, but why? Let's save it. Let's use it for the right time and place. People wanted that breakdown so bad. They were just like, please put that out, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, you can just come see us if you want it, or watch this video. Check out these other ways that you can hear it. And whenever we confirmed the tour with Boundaries end of last year, but we were like, when we're coming up on that, let's put this song out so that a little bit of steam into this. There's a little more things around our name and so on. And also, it was like we're going into the studio. Here's the last thing from the last time we were here. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was really all it was kind of just the bow tie on Learning to Dissolve as a cycle, pretty much.
Sick, man. So, are you guys gonna start writing new material soon? As there's no tours right now, but what's coming up next for Orthodox? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
So we actually spent half of February and then all of April recording a record, and then we jumped right onto the road with Boundaries like a week after we got home. Mm-hmm. So we finished what is LP 4. I don't know. I doubt the mic is picking it up, but my phone is currently buzzing.
That's all right. You need to take a call?
No, it's just Randy LaBeouf sending me things about things he's going to bump in the mix for LP4. But
so there's already an LP that
there's an LP recorded, and we are getting mixes back, and it is truly crazy music. It's probably not coming out this year, but that is what is next. I think we realized at the end of this last tour, we're like, man, we toured the States 5 times off of Learning to Dissolve. We did a lot of shows. And so we're kind of like, let's take a step back, let's relax and really focus on getting the assets for the new record ready and done the way that we want them to be done. And if we get a tour that you can't say no to, we'll take it, but we might be home the rest of the year, which I don't mind. I like home.
Yeah.
But yeah, as of right now, what's next for us is just getting things ready for LP4. So
amazing, man. I loved Learning to Dissolve. It sounds more death metal. Vocally, to me, it's more death metal. There's some death metal parts on the guitar. You get the Korn style groovy riffs and the weird sound effects, and you have the most ridiculous creative breakdowns that are technical AF. Like, I can't believe how technical they are. So I can only imagine what is coming, man. And I'm hyped.
I think with the new one, I'll say we had a lot of confidence in those songs as we wrote them, as we recorded them. And then as we started playing them, you really see what of your material works.
Yeah.
What do people actually, like, what do they get that physical reaction to? What songs do they really care about and why? What part of this song? So on and so forth. And so we basically took all these observing notes that we've taken over the last year and a half of playing shows of these songs. We're like, cool, they like these elements, we're going to crank those up to 11. And it is such a weird collection of songs because it is by far, there's 4 or 5 parts on this record that make the heaviest thing on the last record feel insignificant. And all the while, it is also, there are songs that are the most hardcore thing that we put out since our first LP. So like it is an all over the board genuine expression of what Orthodox has become over the years, and I'm very excited for people to hear it.
Amazing, man. Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be sick. I wanted to ask you just one final question, man. Like, what makes you want to get up in the morning and keep doing this, man? Like, how do you find that inner drive to keep doing hardcore, keep doing metal, and wanting to get in the van and tour and, you know, keep working your day job as much as you can and do this thing, man? Like,
I think a part of it is just being stubborn. You dedicate 10 years of your life to something. It's kind of like if you don't see it through till you know, if you don't beat it till you know it's dead, then how do you know what you could have gotten out of it? Not only that, but it's funny when so many people say to us, like, oh, you guys are blowing up, we're seeing you everywhere. And it doesn't feel like that to me. And it's partially because I have so many friends in bands like Knocked Loose, where I'm like, oh, I just went up to Louisville and watched them play to 2,500 people, and they sold 6,500 tickets in LA and are about to tour with Slipknot as direct support, things like that. And that's like my comparable, because like those are our friends we toured with in like 2015.
You've been able to see them grow.
Yes, so like it's weird when I hear people say that we're blowing up. The moment that you reach the bar goes further.
Yeah.
And so I think a thing for me that keeps me going is kind of like what I was saying with the PLEA shows, is that like this has already taken me so much further than I ever cared. My whole thing of starting a band that I wanted to sing for is because I wanted to have songs with my lyrics, and the goal was like maybe people will sing along one day. And we've so far surpassed that to the degree of like every night, you know, the parts that there's going to be a pile on kind of thing. People have Orthodox tattoos, and you know, if we don't sell a certain amount of merch in a night, it feels like a failure and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, it becomes sort of business-like in that degree. But what keeps me going is just the fact that, like I said, some people are saying like, oh, you guys are doing so well, we're watching you do this. And to me, it just feels like we're right there. We got over the other side of the hill and realized there was another hill, but we're getting up that one faster. And so I think it's kind of just that constant battle of being like, we know what we have is special. I can say with confidence, I don't know anybody else that sounds like Orthodox. That may be to our detriment at times, but I think just being so close, it's kind of like playing the slots for 8 hours. Be like, yeah, but what if I just pull it down one more time?
Yeah.
What if them sevens run across the board? Like, that's kind of what it feels like, is like I can physically still do this. I've made decisions in my life with my other employment arrangement and all this kind of stuff that allows me to do that. Every decision I've made in my life has been with the idea of like, Orthodox has to keep happening. I have to be able to tour. And so it just only makes sense to capitalize on the decisions and really see through to the consequence of them. So
that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
You're a truly driven mother effer,
Thank you.
for lack of a better way of saying it. And I get a lot of positive energy from you, man, because you're so focused on your band and what you're trying to do. And I can only wish you the best, bro.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us on another episode of Shred Sessions. Anybody out there that's watching this, if this meant something to you, if you enjoyed this, please like this video, leave a comment. Let us talk to us, okay? Talk to me. And share this video on forums that you're a part of. It would really help grow the show and the channel. And once again, thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.